Hi everybody, thank you for joining the webinar today. We're going to be talking about the new published documents on learning and development. I'm Nelska from the BSI and I'm the project manager behind all HR related standards at BSI. So I'm here basically to introduce some excellent speakers today. So the first one we have is Valerie Anderson. So she currently works at the University of Portsmouth as a research lead in human resource development. She has been extremely passionate in leading this panel forward and leading the development forward, so we couldn't have done this without her. She has brought to us an excellent mix between learning and development practitioner experience and academic experience. Her experience ranges from training, development, and consultancy with public, private, and not-for-profit organizations. Her research work has been published in a wide range of academic journals, books, and in addition to that, she has worked extensively with the CAPD as well. Following up from Valerie, we have Josh Pooley with us. He currently works as a learning and development practitioner in a global company employing more than 250,000 employees, and he brings to us a decade of experience developing suitable learning and development structures within organizations, and also consulting on various international leadership development programs, and he has been essential to the development of this published document as he has shared that experience with us and helped us drafting certain sections and influencing the rest of the standards. So I'm very excited that they're here with us today for a really fast-paced webinar just to discuss why has BSI decided this is the right time for a guide on learning and development, what the standard actually contains, some emerging trends in the learning and development world, and how the guide relates to these, and how the PD 76000 will benefit practitioners in different organizations and different contexts. And for now, I will hand you over to Valerie to take it away.
Thank you very much, Nell. It's great to be part of this webinar. In my section of this webinar, I'd like to talk about the need for a guidance document on learning and development, which we refer to as PD 76006, lovely title. And I'll also talk about the main features of the guide. I think it's important to be clear, we can't cover everything there is to know about this guide, but Josh, Nell and I are hoping that this short introduction will leave you wanting to take a closer look at the guide and figure out how you can apply it in your organization. So let's talk about why this is a good time for a new guide in learning and development. And the first point I'd like to make here is that the team who we worked together to develop this guide, we were very conscious that this is an important time for learning and development. The need for a focus on this work has never been more urgent. The reasons for this, there are three main reasons for this, I would argue. The first relates with skills shortages. There's been a number of research reports published in the last year by organisations as different as the Institute of Directors, the Prince's Trust, and the Open University. And all those reports have consistently highlighted how, although unemployment is at a 10-year low, there is still a massive and acute skills shortage in the UK. Many sectors are reporting a shortage of the skills that they need, particularly in areas such as construction, technology, and services, where mid-range skills are in short supply. And frankly, if nothing changes as we move towards Brexit, then these skill shortages can only become more of a challenge. There have been estimates in the research that's been published that the cost of these skill shortages to UK businesses is around £2 billion each year. That cost arises as growth plans are held back, as customers are lost, and as other productivity problems arise. Put simply, it takes much longer for people in organisations to try to recruit the staff that have got the skills that they need, and it's much more expensive for them to keep the skills, the staff who possess the skills that they they need, leading to salary inflation where, frankly, it shouldn't be necessary. So that's the first reason why investment in learning and development and the need for this guide, we believe, is very timely. The second point arises from the challenges that organisations face with actually delivering learning and development. Rather worryingly, studies published by the UK government suggest that 90% of the adult population remain year on year untouched by learning and development. There are a number of factors that have led to this situation, and the chart on this slide indicates one of the challenges that we face in the UK. It shows the distribution of skills and qualifications across the different age groups in the UK. So taking just a quick look at this chart, on an age group by age group basis, it compares the proportion of the population, that's the blue lines, with the proportion of people in the UK with recognised skills and qualifications. And just a quick look at that chart indicates how out of balance we seem to have become. Investment in training and investment in skills is focused on the very young, but in fact we know that skills are needed by people in organisations of all ages and with all levels of experience. So the bottom line is that the wrong people, no, that's not quite right, not the wrong people, but people in different parts of our organisation are missing out on learning and development opportunities, and that costs them dear and it costs their employing organisations dear. One of the reasons for this perhaps relates to the structure of organisations in the UK. We do know that most training occurs in large firms, and that's not unreasonable. They have the resources and the organisation with which to support learning and development strategies and policies. However, we also know that smaller firms are the ones who employ over 90% of the working age population. In fact, small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, make up over 99% of all businesses in the UK. What this means is, taken as a whole, we have to face up to the fact that many, many organisations do not have the luxury of training specialists, and so they're unable to benefit from the potential opportunities that learning and development could provide for them. Now, the third point I'd like to make is that this is not just a hopeless, pessimistic situation. There is indeed hope. The point I want to make here is that basically it's not rocket science for organisations to get a better return on learning and development. And this guide works on the premise that work and learning belong together. It's in the workplace where people learn, informally and also through their experience in the workplace. So it is both feasible and economical for small organisations, in fact organisations of all sizes and types, public sector, private sector, not-for-profit, to harness learning and skills development to benefit the organisation and the individuals who work in those organisations. And what this slide depicts is something often referred to as the 70-20-10 model. It has emerged from a lot of consultancy work, and it makes sense to many people based on their own experience. In the workplace, where most of us learn, we don't actually learn much in a formal classroom. We may spend some time in a formal classroom, but how much we retain and apply is perhaps rather limited. We learn a lot more from our experiences, both positive and negative, in the work that we do, in the people that we work with, and through our on-the-job experience. And we also pick up a lot of skills through informal learning, maybe some coaching or some shadowing of other colleagues who have got skills that they can share with us. So the fact that most learning occurs in work is interesting because often when people look at training and development, they focus on classroom-based learning, but in fact it's in the workplace where learning occurs, but that learning is often overlooked and is not harnessed to benefit the individual or indeed the organisation. Perhaps this is because organisations that are smaller, that don't have a training specialist, lack a route map that would help them to organise and understand how better this could occur without major costs being something that has to be faced up to. And that's where the new guide to learning and development comes in. So what I'm going to do in the last few minutes of my section of this webinar is just talk through what the guide looks like, what it contains, and who it has been written for. So the first thing that I'd really like to stress here is that this guide has not been produced principally for specialists in learning, training, development, human resource development, or anything like that. This guide has really been produced for people who are not specialists. It sets out to encourage people to have the confidence and the capability to organise productive learning and development in their organisations, regardless of their size or their sector. We'd like to think that this guide is highly relevant to people working in small and medium-sized enterprises, that it's relevant to consultants who are perhaps working with non-traditional organisations, rapid growth organisations, entrepreneurial organisations, not-for-profit organisations. And we'd also like to think it's particularly relevant for line managers who, as we all know, make most difference to what goes on at work and to whether or not it is possible to learn through the workplace. So it's developed for consultants, it's developed for leaders, and it's developed for organisations of all sizes and types. And the other thing I'd like to point out here is that we've worked very hard to make this a concise and an accessible guide. If you take a look at this guide, if you decide to give it a try, I promise you, you won't be defeated by its length or by any jargon that it contains. We've edited out, as far as we can, all the jargon. It gives guidance about learning at the level of the individual and at the level of the organisation. You'll see a bullet point there called Common Learning Methods. That's because it also provides an overview and highlights the main tried and trusted methods that can be used for learning and work. It also, you'll see the bottom point there, provides guidance on how to assess the outcome of learning and how to evaluate and justify its value to the business. So in finishing off, what I'd like to say is that I believe this guide gives clear guidance about roles and responsibilities of different people within the organisation and the contribution that learning can make to organisational learning and to individual skills development. And I'm right now going to hand over for the second section of this webinar to Josh so that he can talk more about changes and developments in learning opportunities and how they make this a great time to really make best use of this guide to learning and development. So now I'll hand over to Josh.
Thank you very much, Valerie, for some of your wonderful insights into this guide and what it contains. So, as Valerie said, I will look at some of the emerging trends that we start to see in the learning and development industry. And then I will examine how this guide will benefit learning and development practitioners in light of some of these changes. To contextualise why I feel this guide is so important to organisations today, I thought I would quote one of the co-editors of this guide, Mark Loon, who states, "In increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environments, people remain the most potent force in ensuring that their organisations not just survive, but also thrive. Therefore, how organisations nurture and cultivate the best from their employees is imperative. Valuing people is the cornerstone of organisational performance. So let's have a look at some of the recent changes in the learning and development industry. This diagram shows some of the rapid shifts that we have experienced in the last 2 decades, from the start of the millennium, when e-learning and blended learning interventions were really à la mode, through to 2005, when talent management frameworks were more prevalent, with a focus on career enablement. Into 2010, when we saw a shift to continuous learning, a rise in video applications, and indeed the 70-20-10 model, which Valerie mentioned earlier. As we look into today and even the future, we start to embrace the digital age of learning. And by digital learning, I don't mean simply producing videos that are easy to view on your phone. It really means bringing the learning to where the employees are. A lot of organisations are already embracing digital learning, and sometimes in very unstructured, unconscious ways. Learning and development, as we know it, has been disrupted over the last 2 decades by learners' access to connected devices, technological advances, and indeed some of the business model disruptions from some external factors such as Brexit that we've started to see in today's world. These are all catalysts to the shifts in learning and development industry. And right now, we really do have an opportunity of a lifetime to really reimagine the learning and development functions in organisations, and this guide is really a tool to do just that. So let's have a look at some of the specific emerging trends that I can see in the learning and development industry today. Just-in-time learning. Just-in-time learning systems deliver training when and where they're needed. So rather than sitting through hours of pre-planned training, learners are able to tap into always-on platform-based tools to zero in on the information they need to solve a specific problem, perform a specific task, or quickly upgrade their skills. Curated learning. I think we'll all agree there's no dearth of content and learning content that is available today. It's abundantly available in many different forms. Blogs, forum threads, guides, videos, articles, and I could go on. Rightfully, the learning and development function is focusing on shifting from creating content to curating the right content which is personalised for the learner's context. Mobile learning. Learning on the go takes on a new meaning with the increased access to smartphones, to tablets and other devices, implying that we have access to the relevant information in an anytime, anywhere environment. The content should morph to the needs of the learner at the learner's convenience, whether they're in the office, at home on the sofa, travelling to see a client, or out on a run. Video learning. With internet bandwidth increasing, platforms like YouTube and Vimeo have really blossomed. Content is no more constrained to text or images. Videos are quickly becoming the most used form of delivering content, as we are today. If created with the right storyline and design, video learning can prove to be an effective engagement medium. The future calls for short clips and bursts of video content that can be easily consumed by learners. Micro-learning, and indeed micro-qualifications. Micro-learning focuses on resources and not courses. The shortening attention spans and the need for quick fix requirements, micro-learning is the perfect answer. It allows personalised and digestible bite-sized content that can be fed through an array of different delivery platforms. Social learning. People inevitably learn from one another by inquiring, observation, imitation and modelling. Social learning is increasingly being used by organisations to foster collaborative and human-centred learning. There is a considerable rise in interactive platforms for informal or social learning to network, share, collaborate and exchange ideas. It can be viewed somewhat as the modern digital water cooler. On the job learning, more and more learners are now opting to learn from their peers and supervisors whilst being on the job, trying to solve problems at hand. On-the-job learning is the fastest and most effective mechanism to get somebody in a transactional role to be productive very rapidly. Experiential learning is about learning through experience. More specifically, it can be defined as learning through doing and reflection. Experiential learning focuses 80% on the doing and 20% on the reflecting, and the instructor's role morphs into more of a coach. Exploration, experimentation and case studies are all part of this technique. Performance-linked learning. With an ever-increasing demand for productivity and efficiency, the learning efforts have to deliver the desired impact. Development programs have to look into the performance needs of the specific learner and contextualize the learning content. And finally, career enhancement and job rotation. Whilst doing a specific job repeatedly makes one a specialist, it's really job rotation that widens their horizon. And with some of the tectonic shifts of technology and business models, job rotation programs are the need of the hour. So in conclusion, there are many different delivery methods and factors to consider in developing an effective learning and development function. Done well, the learning and development function adds value to the people of that organisation, making it agile and open to adapting to changes in its market. PD 76006 should be used as a framework by practitioners to make sure that the learning and development strategy is evolving in line with the organisational stated purpose and strategy. This guide doesn't tell the reader what to do, but rather prompts the reader to ask the fundamental questions that should be considered in developing and assessing the effectiveness of the learning and development function, independent of the organisation's context. This should never be a one-off activity, it should be a constant cycle of reflection and refinement. Also, in these exciting times of rapid change to the industry, it gives practitioners insights into which technologies their organisation may best invest in and the strategy they may take. Not every option is relevant to every organisation or every learner. The standard is being written so that it is applicable and scalable to any size of organisation. It is also very clearly not written for specialists. It focuses much more on principles and frameworks rather than predetermined solutions, and it can be viewed as a basis for managers and workers to ask those right questions, learning questions as a basis for growth and development. I'd like to hand over to Nell to conclude today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh and Valerie. It's been extremely insightful for me to just get a bit more insight in what the standard is all about. I hope you will give it a chance and go to the shop.bsigroup.com to see in more detail what can be expected. If you do have further questions for our experts, please reach out to my email address below, or even if you're interested to know more about what the HR committee in BSI does, we are very happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you all for your time.